So this is the artist. Susan is in the patio room arranging her bark. Wherever we go, you can see her circling the trees, picking up pieces, peeling it from trunks and branches, looking for what interests and compels her. She collects the stuff in bags. Then she comes home and lays out her treasure. Is there any better light that we can get? Or, oh well.
Do you need the light for your reading?
Yeah.
Okay, let me check about that.
She collects the stuff in bags. Then she comes home and lays out her treasure. She lays the pieces on boards or on canvas, makes patterns and whirls, glues them into place, makes space for the depths and shadows of bark. I'd never really looked at bark before. The browns, the grays, the roughs, the smooths, the lights, the darks, the indents, the puckers, the soft, the hard. She is making something visible which we see every day, like we've all been blind, but open all our eyes, like we see again for the very first time. That's why she's an artist. She helps us see not only what's there, but what's always there. Me, I use words to make visible the everyday of our lives, every day of our lives, every day of our lives, every day. Just words. Okay. Um, let's see. This is it's not exactly a poem. But when I first started writing, I always used to be told when I was in medical school, hello, that there are two kinds of doctors. There are lumpers and splitters. Lumpers takes everything and makes them the same. Splitters takes everything and makes everything different than one another. So I'm a lumper, and this is specially for lumpers, which is me. And the title, it's a list. The title is 13 Ways of Looking at How a Poet and a Therapist Are One. Number one, the ability to sustain accurate attention. Number two, the power to use language and the silences that surround language as a medium of exchange. Number three, the vision to perceive the possibility of transformation that rests within the next moment. Four, experience with subtle transitions that guide us towards skillful beginnings and appropriate endings. Five, the development of a skilled intelligence that can shape what is emerging into a communicable form. Six, the ability to speak, act, and witness truth with compassion. Seven, an appreciation of the power of pacing, time, and rhythm in choreographing change. Eight, a respect for the capacity of form to contain and transmute suffering into wisdom. Nine, a regard for lineages and the power of our ancestors. 10, skills that inspire human humor, growth, and play. 11, a recognition of the beauty of form and the need to judiciously break form. 12, the creation of something that endures over time. 13, a sense of the mystery that exists within the ordinary acts of everyday life. And those are 13 ways in which I believe that an artist and a therapist or a healer actually are also the same. And so being a lumper is very, very appropriate in that regard. So I came to poetry somewhat late in my life, in my late 40s. And the thing that compelled me to it was the fact that everybody who I knew was getting sick and dying. My father got sick and had a terminal illness. My best friend, Ruth Ellen, um, got cancer, had a terminal illness. My dog, Ben, started getting older and he died about that time. And one of my dear patients also had a terminal illness and died. And this happened all within a year. And I was kind of overwhelmed and didn't know exactly how I was going to cope with all of that. And usually a therapist, as I am, would go into therapy, but I didn't want to do that. And so what I decided was maybe if I could find the words to say it and start writing, that might be helpful to me. Oh, I don't need that. I don't need it. I'll manage. Um, and so I did. I found myself a writing teacher. My first writing teacher is both a writer and a healer. Her name is Dina Metzger. She's famous enough so that some of you may actually know her. But I studied with her for a couple of years. And then I moved on to a poet named Jack Grapes. And I studied with Jack for 30 years consecutively and did the bulk of my writing under his tutelage. And Jack says the way that you should write is to write like you talk, because the wisdom of language is in spoken speech. And so that's what I did. And so when you hear my poetry, it's going to sound a lot like somebody talking. And that would be a good thing from Jack's point of view and my point of view. So the first of that group is called What Waiting Is. We sit on the bench of the hospital corridor next to the cafeteria and we wait. You know what waiting is. If you know anything, you know what waiting is. It's not about you. This is about illness and hospitals and life and death. It's about the smell of a disinfectant that hits you in the head. In the bathroom, you look in the mirror. What do you see? Your father's sad face, your mother's eyes. You catch the water cupped in your thickened hands. Hope against hope, you can wash it away. The aging brown spots, the bags, the swelling truth of waiting. You go back to that bench, maybe your mother is there, or your wife who's waiting for your father, who's waiting for the news from the surgeon, or the morphine for the pain, or the nurse who cleans bedpans, who's waiting for her shift to change, while some other man's hand clamps white as a claw to a clutch of bed sheets, and he waits. So then he hears the news. You take the long trip back to LA or Detroit, wherever you're from, and you see the faces of the drivers as they approach you out of the fog, and you see this one, a woman hunched over the wheel like your mother, and you think, it is my mother, and you want to tell her everything, how waiting kills and what it does to your life, how 50 years of marriage is an eyelash blink, but she's past you, headed in the wrong direction, so you wait. Then, out of the corner of your eye, you see your father's face in the driver's seat of a 49 powder blue Pontiac sedan. The thin sliver of his moonlit profile smiling, that the nose is all wrong and it's not really him. And besides, he'd never understand anyway this impatience, this anger, this rage, this love, this fog on the windshield, not even knowing if it's inside or out, because his whole life was waiting. And what is a fish? No other water, or a bird, or the air. So you push the leaden accelerator down. You act like you're headed to some small emergency. You don't give a damn about the cop who's waiting behind the billboard. Death's over your left shoulder. You think you might want to pray, and you do pray, but you don't know what for. And anyway, you're driving, so you go back to the endless lines and lights and exit signs until you get home and see your light blink on the answering machine, but you don't pick it up. Instead, you go to the bathroom, you take a shower, you take a piss, you pull out a carton of leftover food, but it's cold and you can't swallow it. So you push the button and it's your sister's voice, but it's choked and she can't speak. That's how I learned that the waiting was over, that my life had changed forever. This end was a beginning. I didn't know for what. I used to think it was death I was waiting for, but that's not what this is. This is life. So you show up, you do the work, you love who you love, and you learn to wait. And if you're lucky, you learn what waiting is and what you have to give. The next piece also comes out of that period of time in my life and is also relevant to my dad. It's called This Much. When the boy asked the man, "How much do you love me?" the man went down on one knee. Then he leaned towards the boy and he opened his thick arms as wide as the earth until his hands were behind him, and like Atlas, the world rested on his shoulders and back. At the funeral home before the cemetery, I asked to see my father's body, even though the rabbi said he would not recommend it. It laid in a black walnut casket in a room behind drapes. When they opened the casket, I could see it was dressed in a shroud. A hood covered his head. I asked to see it, but the director said he would not recommend it. But Susan and I insisted, so they undid the tie, and his face was pale white. I ran my finger down his cheek. After the eulogy, the rabbi asked me to speak, and I said, the measure of a father is not only how much he loves his children, but how much his children love him. I have a picture of my father on my refrigerator holding his grandson Daniel. You can see my father beaming as he watches Daniel sleep. 25 years before that baby boy was my son Joshua. 25 years before that, he was me. On our last night together, I kissed my father on the cheek, and then I turned to go, and then I turned around and I kissed him again, and then we went home, and that night he died. So we all turn around again. And in the night between the coming and the going, I stood by the side of my bed with my suitcase laid open. I saw the shirts, the pants, the socks, the shoes, the ties. I couldn't remember if I was packing or unpacking, or for where or why. And then back in Tennessee, the other pallbearers and we lifted the casket and lowered it into the ground. And each family member in turn. I was first, then Susan, then Joshua, then Nancy, and Bonnie, and all of the others, except for my mother, who couldn't. Each of us threw a shovel full of dirt, and the earth went thud as it hit the black walnut. Later, Daniel, who's 3 now, asked why we throw dirt on Papa Joe. And then he asked Joshua, why are we sad? And then he asked his mother, why do we laugh if we're sad? So we told him, when you love, you feel it all. And we showed him the world on our backs. Um, I was doing, at that time, a lot of public readings like this. And uh, I was asked by the church in Ocean Park, by the pastor there, if I would come and do a reading because they had recently lost their longtime pastor. And nobody in the congregation was talking about it or much of anything else that was relevant. And she had the wisdom to realize that they needed a way to open things up. And so she asked me if I would come and see if I could facilitate such a dialogue. And this poem is the evidence of what happened. The title of the piece is Afterwards, We All Sat Around in a Circle. After the service, 20 stayed. A woman in a navy blue suit spoke first. I remember, she said, when my mother died. It was 6 months after we first found the lump. Between the breast surgeries and the metastases and the strokes, she was gone. I yelled, "Do it now, Ma, die now." But it took another month. Then a man. Sometimes they need to know it's okay to go. My dad was in a coma for weeks. He got agitated and made sounds, but he couldn't talk. The doctor said there wasn't much they could do. He's terminal, they said. Just give him morphine and make him comfortable. But my brother said, no, not yet. And he and my sister and I got together and agreed it was time for Dad to go. So I was chosen. I sat on the edge of the bed. I said, Dad, it's okay to go. We'll be okay without you. It's all right. And I said it again and again, and I swear he heard me because in 30 minutes he was gone. Then a woman in her 60s. It's been 9 years since my son died. I was so passive. I got him into the hospital. I had to fight for that. But when the doctors told us to leave the room because they had to change the dressings, I didn't say, no, I'll stay. I just went like they said. I couldn't do him any good like that. Then, when I was out of the room, his heart stopped. 9 years it's been. I don't think I'll ever forgive myself. A man in his 40s, my brother, he's paralyzed. He's in a wheelchair, a gunshot wound when he was 16. He takes care of our mom. He does it all. He washes for her. He cooks. He cuts watermelon. He's a blessing, he is. I just can't do it. He blames me, but what can I do? Some people just aren't cut out for it. Then another man about my age. I'm a little scared to say this, but I have no story. I don't cry. When they're gone, they're gone. Nothing more. I work in the movie business. People come and go. We can be close for 6 months, work together every day. Then it's on to the next project. I may never see them again. That's what it was like when my friend Ernie died, like he's out there somewhere, too involved with another project. That's nothing unusual for Ernie. Time just passes. People say there's something wrong with me. I don't know. Sometimes I wonder. A man in his 30s. I've thought about it, been in therapy over it, processed it till I'm blue. But in the end, I still can't accept it. In the end, she's still gone. No matter how I work it out, we were 15. I've got children myself now. I have my wife, I love my wife, but my sister, she was all of our heroes, tall with dark black hair. She drowned going after a ball. I saw her go out and I heard her yell. And when she went under, I saw her. A silver-haired woman near 50. The strange part for me is thinking about the future. My cancer was removed 10 years ago. Between the surgeries and the chemo and the complications, it was all I could do to live day to day. Now it's been 10 years. I'm beginning to believe I have a future. I've lost a lot of friends along the way, but we were there for each other. And so it went around and around until we were done. Then we hugged and we touched, then we left. So it's a lot. And I just want to ask if there's anything that anybody wants to say or not, or question at this point. There's a lot more to come, but I don't want to just leave you in the lurch. Anybody? Okay. So we'll go on. This piece is called "Sometimes the Blues." Sometimes the blues is all there is. Black blues, brown blues, white girl mojo and some down-home way of whispering to your heart. That old suitcase of despair. Your finger tapping on your knee at the bus terminal. Public, in a way, all identity is split. Your lips now willing to let it pass. Sometimes the blues is your head in your hands, elbows on your thighs, the whys of nothing going nowhere. Silence moves, incandescent thoughts, the clock ticks, all the poetry's lost. Sometimes the blues is me, I'm alone. Sometimes the blues is we, you're at home. Time and space estrangements, custody arrangements, always saying you did what? Sometimes the blues is what is not. When the blues becomes what you've got nothing left to lose, then the blues becomes the news, and the news runs through you. Out on the dance floor, the rhythms of living are in pelvic thrust. Electric air, hair flies, women slung low. The sub bass beats the underside of audio. Big mirrored balls, fractured lights, scattered rays. Men pump, arms raised, praise to the scatter of light, the shatter, the right, the glory of horns. A sax blows low alto, booze and ooze, the secretory miracles of women. The cocks slide side to side. The flat of my palms guide her hips, pursed lips, hands fanned. The spirit is among us. We're anemones in the current. Um, Sometimes during the course of my writing, I would study a particular poet and try to get a sense of the style and where it is that that poet is coming from. So T.S. Eliot wrote a long poem called The Wasteland, in which he characterizes what it was like in post-World War I London. And so I decided I was going to write a piece entitled The Southland, which is all around us, and characterize what it was like in the year about 2000 here in Los Angeles. And Eliot's poem, The Wasteland, starts, April is the cruelest month. Kind of a, what? Um, but April is the cruelest month, and I wanted to bring my poem, it's in several pieces. I wanted to bring it back to springtime And so the title of my poem is April is the Coolest Month. After winter rains have soaked the earth and awakened tangled roots, the seeds and bulbs covered over in the waning days of summer burst into bloom. Browns become greens, and again the Southland turns golden. Hillsides a riot of mustard and nasturtium. I picked a few and ate them as jacaranda, chippewana, and bougainvillea all show their love, and the streams flow in the canyons as the snowpack melts in the mountains, and the ocean's blues and greens all sing as poppies bunch on the hillside. It is spring, and all that spring brings, daylight savings, endless evenings, baseball games, and income tax, as whales make their way up the coast with their calves. But somewhere downtown, a child hangs her head because the neighborhood her neighborhood boy shot her dog in the neck, and the blood oozes black on the dying dog's back. All of language is spoken on the outbreath. All of life begins on the in. All of death is spoken on the outbreath. All of life begins on the in. And the beggar woman who collects styrofoam in shopping carts in front of the deli at the corner of 15th and Wilshire Boulevards begs for quarters. Her skirts bound round her scabbed over legs. An old man takes a bite of his lox and eggs, and he dreams about Elijah, who could be the Messiah, but would come dressed as a beggar. The old man would have never recognized her. Instead, he dripped 10 drops of wine at the Passover Seder, 1 drop at a time. 1 for each plague, drip blood, drip drop, drip vermin, drip drop, drip 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 vermin, drip drop, drip drop, the dying of the firstborn, drop drip, drip drop, and he can hear the swish 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 of the mop as the busboys slide sidewise, as young men ride in drive-bys, cruising to the beat of the pumped-up hip-hop. Don't never stop, don't never stop, don't never, 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 ever stop. The old man who emigrated from Germany reads the numbers on his forearm in the writing of his enemy. The woman collects her styrofoam. The old man knows his family's all gone. The light changes, the car lurches and leaves the woman alone. And again, it's spring in the Southland. A number of years ago, I was asked by UCLA's Department of Neuro-Oncology, that's the department that deals with brain cancer, if I would pair poets with brain cancer patients so that the poets could help the patients find the words to describe their experience. And then that was produced in an anthology, which was read at Royce Hall, which we filled, by the way, about 1,500 people there, and we raised $750,000 for brain cancer research. So it was a very successful venture. One of the poems that was produced is the title of this book of poetry called Amazing Change. We can go through amazing changes when we learn we have limited time. One woman who had brain cancer decided what she wanted was to go to Africa to see the gorillas. She and her husband and the guides trek through the jungle, up the mountains. But the woman was having trouble. She struggled and struggled. The guide tried to convince her to go back, but she wouldn't. She wanted to go on, but eventually she couldn't. So she laid down in the grass, and when she did, the gorillas came out of the jungle to her. Yeah. The next piece is Fire in the City of Angels. You know, all of us remember the recent fires um, in the Palisades in Malibu. Just as a certain side note, Susan and I put our house on the market a few months before, and the escrow closed 3 days before it burned to the ground. So we got lucky. But this fire in the City of Angels wasn't written about that fire. Wasn't written about the fire before that. It was written about the fire before that. But it sounds strangely familiar because they're all the same. They're all different, but they're all the same. Well, it was that time of year, fall, Halloween, the Day of the Dead, a time when we are most in touch with the world where trees call our names. At night, the souls that inhabit the Garden of Stones congregate. Fires throw shadows in relief on the landscape. The trees dance. It's a time of fire in Southern California. It's a time of fire in Southern California. Almost got through the whole thing. It is a time of fire in Southern California. It hadn't rained all summer, so an offering must be made to appease the gods of winter, the nature of desire, fire, 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 the rip, flames fan the hillside. 3 hours to evacuate, decide, papers, photos, files, the picture of a child, fill a case with blankets, take plenty of clothes, layers, we don't want to be cold. Firemen drag their hoses over the scorched earth, eyes wild, reflecting visions. Another house goes up, fanned by the devil winds. Water gets dropped by helicopters onto the advancing flames. Retardant dropped by cargo planes falls out of the sky. The stench of charred flesh. A horse got caught in barbed wire. Desire, desire, desire. 1,000 homes ablaze and counting. A woman in her 90s shrieks. She and her husband built this house, raised their family, while here on network television, their daughter Sally combs the ashes for treasure, finds golf clubs, 3 of which have not melted. We will not sleep well tonight, the air awash in ash. The cloud of smoke hovers over LA, the wish to douse myself in water. Never has a night been so long as the visions of yesterday morph into tomorrow. The spirits in the trees sing their songs. The future holds we are not alone as the souls congregate in the Garden of Stones and the fire in the City of Angels burns on. All too familiar. And now, for my last piece, I'm going to read a piece called Do Not Look Up to Me, My Child. And I'm pretty sure he hates when I say this, but when I read it to Josh 30 years ago. He said it was his favorite poem, but I was not his favorite poet. He wanted to make sure I knew. Do not look up to me, my child, cause heights seem out of reach, and looking up will make you lose the sense of what I teach. The answers lie within us all, but I looked outward first. Horizons lend perspective when our problems seem the worst. Delusions grow as people age and fail to realize that growing up is nothing more than knowing your own size. So don't be scared of heights or depths that trap us with their lies. A father's love is straight ahead and level with your eyes. Thank you all very much. Is there anything that anybody wants to say or ask or comment on the coffee stain in the middle of the floor?
Well, Robert, the first thing, not about the program, which is spectacular beyond words. First thing is, I'm amazed to see so many people at this hour of the day. You can't get more than 2.5 people to a movie. Everybody usually pulls in the blanket at 6:30. So this is a testament to you and to what they know they can expect and have gotten from you. And this is incredible.
Thank you, Jen.
Do you work at memorizing them, or do they just stay in your mind?
Well, about 30 years ago, some few years after I started writing, I would go out in public and I would read, at coffee shops, open mics, and so forth and so on. And I became aware of something called slam poetry. Do you know what that is? No? Does anybody know what it is? Somebody? Well, it's a joust. It's a poetry competition. And in it, poets read a piece, under 3 minutes, and they get scored by members of the audience, like in the Olympics, 8.6, 9.1, 4.2, whatever. And it's a competition. There are individual slams where each person performs as an individual, and then there are team slams where the team from Los Angeles goes up against the team from Minneapolis, and the score is an aggregate of each poet's scores. And I was fortunate enough to make the team from Los Angeles. It was a kind of a head-to-head competition. And so I made the team from Los Angeles, and my dear friend Jerry Quickly, who was also on the team, he said, "Robert, it's all well and good that you read your poems from the page, but you can't be doing that for this event. You've got to memorize them." And so I set out to memorize a select number of pieces so that I would have pieces to perform. And that year, the National Poetry Slam was in Middletown, Connecticut, and we finished out of 88 teams. We finished sixth. We did really well, and that's how I learned how to memorize. And subsequently, when I had a piece that I thought would do well in such a setting, I would memorize it. And at this point, I have about 20 of them that are committed to memory. But the key is they can't be more than 3 minutes. So you might, if you timed any of them, they're pretty close to 3 minutes. Yeah. And it was hell. I would go to my poetry workshop each week and I would work on a particular poem. And my teacher, Jack Grapes, fortunately, was an actor and a director, and so he schooled me in how to do it. And so that's what happened. And there are always people in an audience when I perform that ask that same question. You memorize them, how do you do that? Now, if I had to do it now, it would be a little more difficult. But
I remember in high school, when we had to do any kind of writing or liturgy, we had to memorize the poems and
yeah,
perform them.
yeah,
So I can see
yeah.
it was hard.
Now, I will say this. If you learn, like if you are a writer and a poet, and you like to do that, you develop a completely different relationship to the poem when you're not reading it. You have a different relationship to the audience. You may have noticed as I was reciting, I would look at you, I would look at various members and, kind of reflect back an expression, like, or so you develop a different relationship to the piece. And to people who write and who like to read, I highly recommend it as a way of, performing.
Robert, I had a similar experience when you were talking about who was dying. My parents lived in a different state, and my father had died down there, and they had him in a coffin that was closed. There were just a few people around. I asked the rabbi to open the coffin because I
Right.
hadn't seen him last. I had a chance to kiss him, and it brought it back to me.
Yeah, yeah. And that's a very, very, very common response. When you get into this stuff, like at the church in Ocean Park, when you get into this stuff, instead of not talking, you can't stop people from talking. They want to say these things that they've had bottled up in one way or another. So I really appreciate your telling that little anecdote from your life. And I will, just as a little enticement, we've already scheduled the next one of these. Lena, what day is it at the end of June? You know?
You know what, Mike? It was on the paper that we gave out yesterday on the meeting.
Yeah.
So if anybody has upcoming activities, it is on the list there.
So it's the last, I think it's the last Thursday
I
in
want to say
June.
it is exactly.
Yeah, 6:30. It's going to be a lot less of me and a lot more of you, because, for instance, we'll start off with the poem we all sat around in a circle, and I'll read what each of the participants said, and then I'll ask you, if you were there in the congregation, what might you write? And you'll have a pencil and paper, and you can jot down a few sentences, and then we'll share, anybody who wants to, what's on your mind. And remember, the important thing is to just write like you talk. I want to tell you about when my dog died, and just write about it. In fact, I used to run poetry readings on Melrose in LA, and we used to do what are called call and response poetry. So somebody would read, and then whoever that called to would read next. And the first 6 poems were all about people's dogs dying. You find.
She's a cat lady.
Yeah, and one snake. I mean, what you find is that people have so much in common, and it's only a question of finding the words and the willingness to elicit it. And it's a wonderful and inspiring thing. So I'll ask those who come. I expect, because of the writing part of it, there'll be some fall off, but there need not be. Maybe you'll all bring your friends. Doesn't matter. If you want to read aloud, you're certainly encouraged to, but nobody is going to be forced to.
I can see a relationship between the way you presented poetry and journaling,
Yes,
which I'm bad at. But once I do it, it's like unblocking.
yeah. Well, you ought to go to Shirley's journaling. Yeah, she has a journaling workshop. And yeah, I mean, it is similar to journaling. Journaling is its own form, but it sounds frequently similar.
As you were talking, it reminds me personally, if I have any kind of problem that's really bothering me, there's something about writing down
Yeah.
feeling. It's
Well-
like telling it to somebody else. I don't have to read it to anybody.
If I can make
I agree with her.
a PSA announcement.
What?
A PSA announcement. So I wasn't planning on this, but this looks like pretty much the right group. So I am starting a grief support group once a month. I was going to start in July, but I'm going to talk to Lena and see if we can push that. So it's not this, but it touches many of you. I mean, we've all lost people in our lives. In their lives, and whether it's a month ago or 10 years ago, we still might be carrying baggage with us. So that'll give people a chance to speak about whatever they want to speak about.
Good.
Very confidential here on the area. Yes, secure. So the date will be announced.
Yeah. Good. Well, you'll send around a notice.
Yeah.
I'm
Like
sure.
I said, because I hadn't been feeling well, we kept changing the date.
Yeah.
We finally ended up at the end of July, but sitting here and seeing the outpouring for this kind of group, I just said to Lena, we'll look for the date and see if we can do it a little bit faster, because I think people really need that push.
Yeah. So, anybody else? Well, again, thank you all very much for coming. I'm very, thank you. See you all next month.